Have you ever prayed and waited, and waited, and waited some more? You pour out your heart, plead for an answer, and hope that today will be the day God moves. But instead, all you hear is silence. Your mind fills with questions. Is God even listening? Has He forgotten me? Are my prayers going unheard? The waiting season can feel lonely. It can test your faith, making you wonder if you should keep believing or just give up. But let me remind you of a powerful truth: God's silence is not His absence. Even when you don't see Him working, He is moving behind the scenes, aligning everything for your breakthrough. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, He is patient with you. 2 Peter 3 verse 9. What if I told you, God is about to answer your prayers? The doors that once seemed locked will open. The burden you've been carrying will be lifted. The miracle you've been waiting for is closer than you think. The Bible reveals clear signs that God is at work: a deep, unshakable peace in your heart, even when circumstances haven't changed. Doors closing unexpectedly, only for something greater to come. Divine confirmations, scriptures, sermons, or even conversations that speak directly to you. A sudden surge of faith and expectation, as if God is whispering, "Get ready." Beloved, don't lose hope. Your waiting is not in vain. God is about to move. Stay faithful, stay expectant, because your breakthrough is near. Today, let me tell you some stories of faith, struggle, and the peace that comes when God is about to move. The feeling of peace amid chaos. Sarah had been praying for months. She had lost her job unexpectedly, and with 2 children depending on her, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Every morning, she would sit at her kitchen table, staring at the stack of unpaid bills, wondering how she would make it through. She did everything she could, applied for jobs, reached out to friends, and even picked up small side gigs. But nothing seemed to be enough. One night, as she lay in bed, she felt an overwhelming peace wash over her. It made no sense. The problems were still there, but suddenly, she wasn't afraid. It was as if an invisible hand had reached into her heart and whispered, "Trust me." For the first time in months, she slept peacefully. But the next morning, reality struck again. She woke up to find an eviction notice on her door. Panic threatened to take hold, but that peace from the night before hadn't left her. Somehow, she knew, God is still in control. She packed up her things, gathered her kids, and went to stay with a friend. It wasn't what she had planned. It wasn't what she had prayed for. But something deep inside her told her this wasn't the end. Yet, as days turned into weeks, she started questioning that peace. Did I imagine it? Was it just false hope? The silence from God was deafening, and doubt began to creep in. One day, as she was scrolling through job postings, she came across a company she had never heard of before. The position wasn't exactly what she was looking for, but something inside her nudged her to apply anyway. She hesitated. What if they reject me? What if it's another dead end? Then, she remembered the peace she had felt. That whisper of, "I'm working on it." She took a deep breath and applied. The very next day, she received a call. "We'd love to interview you." Hope flickered inside her. Maybe, just maybe, this was it. The interview went well. The hiring manager seemed impressed. Everything was lining up perfectly. Then came the email, "We regret to inform you that we've chosen another candidate." Sarah felt like the wind had been knocked out of her. "Why, God?" she cried. "I trusted you. I felt your peace. Was I wrong?" For the first time in weeks, fear tried to creep back in. But then, she remembered, that peace had come before the storm even grew worse. That must mean, the story isn't over yet. So instead of falling into despair, she made a decision: I will still trust Him. And that's when everything changed. A week later, her phone rang again. It was the same company. "Sarah, the candidate we originally hired didn't work out." We remember your interview, and we believe you'd be perfect for the role. Are you still interested?" Her heart pounded. Was this real? Yes, she almost shouted. Not only did they offer her the job, but it came with a higher salary than she had before. A salary that would allow her to not only provide for her children but also move into a better home. Sarah fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. God had been working all along. Looking back, Sarah realized something powerful. The peace she felt before the storm was real. The delays, the rejections, the moments of doubt, they weren't signs that God had forgotten her. They were part of His perfect plan. Even when it seemed like nothing was happening, He was moving behind the scenes, aligning everything for the right moment. And that's what I want to tell you today. If you're in a season of waiting, if you feel like God is silent, if you're questioning whether you truly heard from Him, don't give up. That peace in your heart, it's not a mistake. It's God whispering, "I'm working on it." Your breakthrough is coming. Your storm will settle. And one day soon, you'll look back and see that every moment of waiting, every unanswered prayer, every tear, it was all leading to something greater than you ever imagined. So hold on. Stay faithful. Because when God is about to move, the first sign is peace. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4 verse 7. When doors close, it's a setup, not a setback. When life says no. Have you ever faced a moment when everything you hoped for slipped right through your fingers? You prayed, you planned, you did everything right, only to watch the door slam shut in your face. Maybe it was a job you were sure was meant for you. A relationship you believed would last forever. A dream you had nurtured for years. And then, suddenly, it was gone. It's in moments like these that doubt creeps in. Did I hear God wrong? Why is this happening? But what if I told you that this rejection, this closed door, was actually God's setup for something far greater? Because sometimes, God's answer doesn't come the way we expect. The doors that close are not meant to break us, but to redirect us towards something we never saw coming. Let me tell you a story. A story about setbacks, redirections, and the surprising way God works behind the scenes. A dream job disappears. Daniel had been waiting for this opportunity for years. He had spent countless nights working, studying, and preparing for his dream job. And when the perfect position finally opened up, he knew, this was it. The answer to his prayers. The interview went perfectly. The hiring manager seemed impressed. His heart raced when they told him, "We'll be in touch soon." Days passed. Then weeks. Then came the email. "We regret to inform you that we have chosen another candidate." Daniel felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. "God, why?" He whispered. "I thought this was your plan for me." Rejection stings. For weeks, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling of failure. He watched as his friends moved forward in their careers, their lives unfolding exactly as they had hoped. Meanwhile, he was stuck, left wondering if he had done something wrong. Every door seemed to be closing. Opportunities slipped away, one after another. Had he missed God's voice? Had he prayed for the wrong thing? Doubt and frustration began to settle in. Then, one night, he sat in his car, staring at the city lights, feeling completely lost. "God, I don't understand. What do you want from me?" In the silence, a thought crossed his mind. A whisper. A reminder. "Trust me." Daniel didn't feel like trusting. But something deep inside urged him not to give up. So instead of drowning in self-pity, he made a choice, to stay open, to keep believing that God was working, even when it didn't make sense. That week, an old friend reached out with an unexpected invitation. "Hey, there's a new company looking for people. It's not exactly what you were going for, but I think you'd be a great fit. Want me to put in a word for you?" At first, Daniel hesitated. It wasn't the job he had dreamed of. It wasn't part of his plan. But then he thought, what if this was the redirection he had prayed for? So he said yes. Daniel walked into that interview with mixed emotions. A part of him still longed for the job he had lost. A part of him was afraid to hope again. But something about this opportunity felt different. The hiring manager didn't just ask about his skills, they asked about his vision, his passion, his purpose. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance to make a real impact. And then, something unexpected happened. We were actually looking for someone with a different background, but after hearing your story, we believe you'd be a perfect fit. A week later, he was hired. Not only was the role better than what he had originally pursued, but the salary, the team, and the company culture were all beyond anything he had imagined. One afternoon, months after starting his new job, Daniel received a message from a friend. "Hey, remember that company you originally applied for? They just announced layoffs. Half their staff got let go." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The job he had desperately wanted, the one he was heartbroken to lose. It wouldn't have lasted. If he had gotten what he thought he wanted, he would have been right back where he started. Suddenly, everything made sense. The rejection. The closed doors. The frustration. God wasn't denying him. He was protecting him. And in that moment, Daniel realized a powerful truth. Sometimes, what feels like rejection is actually God's redirection. Looking back, Daniel could see it clearly. Every disappointment, every setback, every moment of confusion was leading him towards something better. He had prayed for one opportunity, but God had something greater in store. He thought he was being rejected, but he was actually being rescued. And maybe that's exactly what's happening in your life right now. Maybe the doors that are closing aren't meant to hurt you, but to redirect you. Maybe God is setting you up for something you can't even imagine yet. So don't lose hope. That closed door is not the end of your story. Stay open. Stay faithful. And remember, rejection is often God's redirection. Because when one door closes, God is already preparing the right one to open. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29 verse 11. What about you? Have you ever experienced a closed door that turned out to be a blessing in disguise? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how God has worked in your life. Divine confirmations through unexpected ways, how God speaks to you. When you need an answer from God. Have you ever been desperate for an answer from God? You've prayed, you've waited, but all you hear is silence. You wonder, is he listening? Does he even care? And then, out of nowhere, you hear a sermon, read a Bible verse, or overhear a conversation that speaks directly to your heart. It's almost as if God himself whispered, "This is for you." But let me tell you something, that's not a coincidence. That's God answering you in his own way. God speaks to us in ways we don't always expect. He may not always send an audible voice from the heavens, but he sends divine confirmations, clear signs that he is guiding our steps. Let me share a story with you. A story about doubt, waiting, and the powerful ways God speaks when we need him the most. A prayer for direction. Rachel had reached a crossroads in her life. For months, she had been praying for clarity. She had a major decision to make, whether to stay at her current job, which felt safe but unfulfilling, or step into the unknown and pursue a new opportunity that both excited and terrified her. She begged God for an answer. "Lord, if this is your will, show me a sign. Make it clear. I don't want to make a mistake." But the days passed, and nothing happened. No dream, no divine voice, no clear answer. Just silence. She began to doubt. Maybe I'm supposed to figure this out on my own. Maybe God doesn't really care about the details of my life. Then, something happened that changed everything. One Sunday morning, Rachel sat in church, distracted and restless. She wasn't expecting anything special. But then, as the pastor began his sermon, her heart nearly stopped. "Some of you are waiting for a sign from God," he said. "You're afraid to step out in faith because you can't see the full picture. But God is telling you right now, trust me, I am making a way for you." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. Could this be the answer? Was this God speaking directly to her? She wanted to believe it, but part of her hesitated. What if I'm just imagining things? She needed more confirmation. That evening, she sat in her car, replaying the sermon in her mind. "God, if that was really you speaking, please confirm it again. I don't want to make a mistake." Just as she finished praying, her phone buzzed. It was a message from a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey Rachel, I don't know why, but I felt like I should send you this verse. Isaiah 41 verse 10, "Do not fear, for I am with you, do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Rachel's hands trembled. That was the exact verse she had written in her journal weeks ago while praying about this decision. Her heart raced. This can't be a coincidence. Rachel felt a surge of confidence, but doubt still whispered in the back of her mind. Was she really ready to step into the unknown? The safe choice, staying where she was, felt easier. But deep inside, she knew God was nudging her towards something more. The next day, she opened her Bible, still searching for peace. And there it was, again. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6. She closed her eyes. 3 separate confirmations. 3 different ways God had spoken. She knew what she had to do. With a deep breath, Rachel stepped out in faith. She turned in her resignation, not knowing exactly what would come next, but fully trusting that God was leading her. And then, the most incredible thing happened. Just a week later, she received an unexpected call. A company she had admired for years had an opening. They had seen her work and wanted to interview her. She hadn't even applied. Rachel knew, this was God. Not only did she get the job, but it was everything she had prayed for: better pay, more flexibility, and a role that aligned with her passions. She looked up with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Lord. You were speaking all along." Looking back, Rachel realized something powerful. God had been speaking the whole time. Through a sermon, a text message, and scripture, each moment was a divine confirmation. Doubt almost made her miss it. She could have ignored the signs, but she chose to listen, and that made all the difference. God's answers don't always come in expected ways. Sometimes, He speaks through people, through the Bible, and even through everyday conversations. Maybe you've been waiting for a sign. Maybe you've been praying for an answer. Let me tell you, God is speaking. You just have to be willing to listen. The next time you hear a sermon that speaks directly to your heart. The next time you come across a Bible verse that feels like it was meant just for you. The next time a friend sends you a message that aligns perfectly with what you've been asking God about. Don't ignore it. That's not a coincidence. That's God answering you. So trust Him. Listen. Because when He speaks, it's always with love, wisdom, and perfect timing. Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33 verse 3. What about you? Have you ever experienced a moment where God spoke to you in an unexpected way? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how He's worked in your life. A sudden surge of faith, the sign that your breakthrough is near. A feeling you can't ignore. Have you ever woken up one day and felt different, lighter, stronger, expectant? Your situation hasn't changed. The bills are still due, the diagnosis is still there, the relationship is still broken. Yet, deep inside, you feel a shift. It's as if hope has taken root in your heart, and for the first time in a long time, you just know, God is about to move. That's not your imagination. One of the strongest signs that God is about to answer your prayers is a sudden surge of faith. Doubt fades, fear loses its grip, and your heart is filled with confidence that a breakthrough is near. But what if I told you that this surge of faith isn't just a feeling? It's a sign. A divine signal that heaven is responding. Let me tell you a story of doubt, faith, and the moment everything changed. Michael had been struggling for months. His business was failing, and every effort to save it seemed to fall apart. He had poured his heart, time, and money into building his dream, but nothing was working. Day after day, he prayed. God, please. I need you. Show me what to do. But the silence was deafening. At first, he held on. He told himself to be patient. But as weeks turned into months, frustration set in. Why am I even praying if nothing is happening, he thought. Hope was slipping away. His faith was weakening. Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, Michael sat alone in his office, staring at the stack of unpaid invoices on his desk. He had tried everything, marketing, networking, cutting costs, but the numbers weren't adding up. If something didn't change soon, he would have to shut everything down. Tears welled in his eyes. Maybe this is it, he thought. Maybe God isn't going to come through this time. He was exhausted, tired of believing, tired of hoping, tired of waiting. For the first time in months, he considered giving up. But then, something happened. That night, as he lay in bed, Michael felt something stirring inside him. It was unexplainable, yet undeniable, a deep, overwhelming sense of peace. It wasn't logical. Nothing in his circumstances had changed. But for the first time in months, he felt different. Instead of waking up anxious, he woke up expectant. Instead of fear, he felt faith. Instead of doubting, he knew, God was about to do something. He didn't have proof. He didn't have a guarantee. But he had faith. And for the first time, that was enough. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Hebrews 11 verse 1. Michael had no idea what was coming next, but he felt an urgency in his spirit to take a bold step. He started making calls, reaching out to old connections, and speaking about his business with a renewed confidence. It didn't make sense, he should have been discouraged. But instead, he spoke with authority, believing that God was already working behind the scenes. Then, a door slammed shut. A potential investor, who had promised to help him, suddenly backed out. Michael felt the sting of disappointment creeping back in. God, I thought you were moving. Why did this happen? The old fear tried to return, but something in his heart whispered, keep believing. Keep expecting. And so, he did. Just 3 days later, Michael received a call. A businessman he had met years ago had heard about his struggles. I don't know why, but I felt like I should reach out. I believe in what you're doing, and I want to help. How much do you need? Michael's hands trembled. This wasn't just a small blessing, this was exactly what he needed to turn everything around. The same day, another unexpected contract came through, one that would set his business up for long-term success. It all happened so fast. One moment, he was on the brink of losing everything. The next, his prayers had been answered in ways he never imagined. God had been working all along. Looking back, Michael realized something powerful. The shift in his spirit wasn't random, it was a sign. Before the breakthrough came, God filled him with faith to prepare him for what was coming. The closed door wasn't rejection, it was redirection. If the investor hadn't backed out, he wouldn't have connected with the right people. Faith preceded the miracle. He had to believe before he saw the answer. And that's what I want to tell you today. Maybe you've been waiting for an answer. Maybe nothing seems to be changing. But if you've started to feel a shift in your spirit, if faith is rising, if hope is returning, if you suddenly feel a confidence that you can't explain, pay attention. That's not just your emotions. That's a sign that God is moving. Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" John 11 verse 40. Your breakthrough is near. Don't stop believing now. Faith precedes the miracle. Have you ever experienced these signs before your prayers were answered? Think back to a time when you felt an unexplainable peace, even before the breakthrough came. Or when doors closed, only to lead you to something even greater. Maybe God spoke to you through a sermon, a scripture, or a friend's unexpected words, just when you needed it most. These moments are not coincidences. They are divine confirmations that God is working behind the scenes, aligning everything for His perfect plan in your life. The Lord is faithful to all His promises and loving toward all He has made. Psalm 145 verse 13. If you've experienced these signs, share your story in the comments. Your testimony could be the encouragement someone else desperately needs today. You never know how God can use your words to strengthen another person's faith. And if this message has spoken to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Click that like button to let others know you've been blessed, subscribe to Spiritual Journals to stay connected for more faith-filled content, and share this with someone who is waiting for their breakthrough. You could be the reason someone finds hope again. God is moving. Even in the waiting, even in the silence, He is working on your behalf. So stay expectant, stay faithful, and remember, your answer is closer than you think. God bless you.